So, good afternoon, and welcome again to the Litau First Floor Forum area. We know that you've been extremely excited and you've been amazing participants throughout the day, yesterday and today. But haven't we been excited about this panel, yesterday and today? So, the time is here. We have Sachin Pilot with us, who needs no introduction, but I would still introduce him because that's my duty. And so where do I begin? Mr. Sachin Pilot, at the age of 26, he became the youngest member of parliament upon his election from Dausa, Rajasthan in 2004. He was re-elected from the Ajmer parliamentary constituency in 2009 when he became the Minister of States in the Ministry of Communications and Information Technology, and later he became Minister of State of Ministry of Corporate Affairs. The journey in his political career has been phenomenal. In 2013, he was appointed as the president of Rajasthan Pradesh Congress Committee, and in 2018, we have Congress in power in Rajasthan. And also we have with us Mr. Sadanand Dhume, who would moderate this panel, a fierce writer and a journalist. So brace yourself for an exciting, exciting panel here.
Go ahead and start, you. Good afternoon, everyone. As I walked into the campus just now, I had a very nicely well-prepared speech that I thought I'll share, but Sadanand has convinced me that no one wants to hear a written speech and you rather have a more open discussion. So what I thought was I'll still stick to a few points that I think are important for me to make, considering the theme of the conference, and I think more time for us to have a question answer or a discussion, as he suggested. So let me start. Members of the Harvard faculty, everyone who's traveled to be a part of this conference, organizers, students, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank the organizers for inviting me to this great Center for Learning. It's my great privilege to stand before you today and share some thoughts that I have. This conference is a reflection of Harvard's strong connect with India, and I'm informed that India is the third largest source of students to this university. The conference has panels where a wide range of topics related to social services, economics, politics, and media have been discussed. For my remarks, I've decided to go on with the theme of the conference, which is India at an inflection point. In this context of this conference, I understand that the broad aspects of India's diverse national life and the broad aspects that you have been witnessing for the last so many years, it's important here for me to just add that the turning of the time and the turning of India's demographic life and democratic life are equally important. We have witnessed in the last few years and decades a rapidly changing society and much more rapidly changing economy. But I think the challenges exist. So today, as we embark upon a new journey in the 21st century, we're also looking back and seeing from our past experiences where we have been and what we've learned and how to move forward. The Indian economic growth story, in 1991, when we had our first balance of payment crisis, we were able to convert that into an opportunity and then moved forward. So today we have India as the top 5 economies in the world. We have one of the most youngest populations, youngest working populations in the world. Are we doing enough to reskill the India growth story about all the skilled workers that we have on hand? Have we done justice to move forward with the millions and tens and millions of individuals who have the potential, the imagination, and the creativity to reshape India's economy? I think what is lacking, at least from the governance point of view, is the fact that we have multiple parties. At the last count in Parliament, we had about 35 parties. And I see some of my colleagues who are politicians in the US, and they have so much trouble coping just with 2 parties. You can imagine what we have to go through in our parliament to negotiate legislation, to pass laws. But I think the fact that we have been ingrained into having a democratic way of life is far more important than the few benefits that we are counted when we are told about how India pays a democracy tax because decisions are taken too slow and taken too late. The median age in India is 27. So I'm 24 years above the median age. When I first entered parliament, I was 26 years of age. And I've seen in the last 15 odd years how India has progressed and how it is shaping our reality. Is our leadership up to the mark? The people that we elect, the people that represent us, are they the ones to lead India into the 21st century? Very broad questions. And I think the 2 or 3 things that come to my mind is that the Indian political system throws up leadership from its areas, from its villages, from its towns, and they have to align themselves with what aspirational India wants. So the last UPA government, of which I was a part of, in 2004 to 2014, 140 million people were lifted from abject poverty. And my generation of politicians, I think, will be judged upon how many economic opportunities we offer to our generation. So in the 70s and the 80s, it was about equality, it was about Garibi Hatao, it was about social justice. The 90s onwards has been more about the economics of it all. And as governments change, in the last 15 years, every shade of government has been there in Delhi. What has broadly remained the same is our economic policies, foreign policies, but what's changed now in the last 5 years is not so much the policies, but the politics of governance. And I say this because I've seen in the last 5 years, we have a full majority government in Delhi. The promises, the speeches, are they matching the reality that we're facing today? It's an important question. In 2 months' time, we will have elections. As you all know, 2 months ago, we had elections in 3 large North Indian states where the Congress party defeated the BJP, and we have formed government in Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan, and Madhya Pradesh. The next election is very interesting because this election will determine not just the next 5 years of our country and our society, but what sort of leadership gets acceptance and credence from a population of 1.3 billion people. Don't forget, in India, the general elections are the single largest planned human exercise on earth. In 2014, 813 million people were eligible voters. 1 million officials manned more than 11 million polling booths in 543 constituencies. So this election in India is nothing short of what's happening now in the northern state of India, Uttar Pradesh, the Kumbh Mela. 150 million people are taking a dip at the confluence of 3 holy rivers. So India is, in sheer size and scale, is second to none. But like I said earlier on in my remarks, the challenges remain, are we able to find jobs for young people? Are young people unemployed? Not just unemployed, are they underemployed? A very alarming data came to my site a few days ago. For 16,000 jobs in Indian Railways, there were more than 3 million applicants. And that job wasn't a very high-grade job. So what we're seeing in India now is we have a large middle class, but we also have a large aspirational middle class, which does not actually have the middle income group, but they have the access to technology and mobility and internet, so they know what the world is there to offer to them, but how are they able to get to that lifestyle is a big challenge for a very large part of our country. I've been working in Rajasthan as the Deputy Chief Minister for the last 2 odd months, and I can already see that people are yearning for a change. What sort of a change will it be? Will it be able to capture all the emotions and all the aspirations of people right from Guwahati to Gujarat, from Kerala to Kashmir? People and parties, leaders and leadership that can assimilate all these expectations and aspirations, I think, are crucial to steward India into a leadership role. India's geopolitical footprint is much larger than it was, let's say, 20 years ago. And I think the difference between a young person studying in India or working in India, we have the same lawyers, doctors, architects, engineers as we had 25 years ago. But the crucial difference today for a young professional working in India and a person who had the same qualifications 25 years ago is the self-confidence that a young Indian person has today. Many polls have shown that Indians have a lot of faith in the future of our country. There are many countries that had similar data 30 years ago, but have fallen by the wayside. So to my mind, India is at an inflection point where if we make the right choices, socially and politically, we have so much more potential and we can punch much above our weight in the years to come. It all depends. I take examples, Sadanand, of Mexico and Argentina. Those countries in the 80s were tipped to go places, but things went wrong politically, and today we've seen where the economies are and where the societies are. But I'm very optimistic. I'm optimistic because of the fact that in the last 20 odd years, my experience being in public life has shown me that ultimately people make the right choices for themselves. And the great, the great underscoring value in our politics is that we accept with humility whatever decisions people make. So in 2014, the Congress party lost elections. We were there in 10 years in government, and we lost badly. So the first thing we did was we accepted with full humility the mandate of the people. So this transition of power happens seamlessly in our country, which people take for granted. But look around our neighborhood. It doesn't happen so easily in Nepal, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Burma, China, wherever. China though doesn't happen at all. But in India, whenever it does happen, there is no animosity. And I keep propagating this fact that we have our differences. And I have differences with many of my political leaders in different parties. But that does not make us enemies of each other. You know, a healthy debate, discussion, deliberations, disagreement, that's all very well. But of late, I've seen the kind of narrative being laid out in New Delhi. It's more acrimonious. It's more venomous. It's more confrontationalist. When you say that you want to eradicate a political party or eradicate a leadership or an ideology, that is not appropriate. You know, 5,000 years of our history has shown us that we are what we are because we accept, we assimilate, we inculcate, and we try and find the best in everybody. So I have differences with people who are in different political parties, but I'm always happy to debate, to learn from some of them if they have anything constructive to say. But the fact that we have to confront and that negativity is something that I don't want to express as a politician to young people who watch some of us on television or hear us on debates. So the idea of being humble, of being approachable, of being open to ideas, of accepting mistakes when we all human beings, we all have to make mistakes. But there is a disposition, there is a line of thought in our polity nowadays that it's if you are opposed to the people in power, then you're anti-national. If you don't agree with what we are saying, and we are going to talk about what you wear, what you eat, who you pray to, what clothes you wear, that's sometimes far more important for some people as opposed to what jobs we have, how many girls go to school, what is the data on sanitation, on healthcare, on primary education. So these are all important choices, and today, because the world is so technologically interconnected, it's not required for everyone to be preached individually. I think young people in India understand what the options are, what the opportunities are, what the challenges are. They have to make the right choice. We as politicians can only make them aware. I can urge them, we can do advocacy, but the final choice, that one button that they press on those very famous EVM machines, that will decide who will lead India in the next 5 years. I think it's an open discussion, open question. Many have said, sir, 2 years ago it wasn't an open question. But today, because of what we've seen, and I'm standing here aggrieved as an individual, as an Indian, about what happened in Pulwama 2 days ago. The terror attack in Kashmir was unprecedented. There is no reason why 40 young men had to lose their lives who were protecting our nation. So when it comes to challenges of our national security, challenges to our international borders, to our integrity, there is absolutely no two voices in our country. So I want to just give condolences. There were 5 young men who were from my home state of Rajasthan who were killed in that attack. It's issues like these, it's challenges like these that can be detrimental to our growth, to the India story. But we have to be resilient. We cannot accept this brutality by merely sharing words of sorrow and expressing regret. We have to stand up for our own. If this sort of an attack had happened in any other country, including the one I'm standing in right now, the response would have been much different. So, and I think when it comes to issues that are important to us as a country, we have differences in parliament. I disagree with a lot of my colleagues in the BJP, for example. Frankly speaking, I don't agree with a lot what they have to say about many things. But when it comes to issues like this, I recall, Sadan, before I wrap up, the parliament attack. Mr. Bajpayee was Prime Minister of India. The attack in parliament happened, and within a short few hours, the kind of solidarity that all political parties expressed in the current government, because the Indian Army, the Indian Republic, Indian Constitution is not someone's personal property. It belongs to all of us. We're equal stakeholders. We have contributed equally in the 70 years to build the institutions that we have today. Our democracy is taken for granted. It has taken some effort, some sacrifice, some contribution by leaders in the last 60 years to make sure that every single person in the furthest village understands and wants his value for his vote. So those are systems that we have evolved over the last 70 years. Challenges to our nation, challenges like we've seen, the one in Pulwama, are absolutely unacceptable. Irrespective of which color of parties and government in New Delhi, people who have done this will hear back in very strong words. And I think my party and I, all of us stand united with our army, with the armed forces, with the government of the day, that they will take the right steps to make sure that this is set right. You have no idea the kind of sentiments that are there in India today. When I left Jaipur day before night, you could see the overwhelming response that people had. To this barbaric attack that happened in Pulwama, it's not just about a small terror incident. To have killed so many people, our armed boy, and I saw a photograph next day. Same spot where the accident happened, the incident happened, same CRPF personnel were guarding the same place with the same dignity and vigor as they had before the attack. That shows how professional they are, that shows how dedicated they are, and I cannot salute them enough. I mean, I'm standing here, I've had a long record of, my grandfather was a non-commissioned officer, not an officer, he was a Havaldar in the army. My father was an Air Force officer. I took it upon myself to join the Territorial Army. So I wear the olive green every once in a while when I'm part of the army. And I can sense that in India, we all talk about many things, elections, and you hear these speeches sometimes on these television channels. And the debates, Sadanand, you've been a part of some of these few debates. After debate's over, you need aspirin more than anything else. You don't learn very much. And I've noticed that in a television debate, if you hear a program, you must come out more informed after half an hour. But sometimes these TV debates, there's not much information that comes out of it. Despite all the noise that we have in our political discourse, I think it's important to point out, and I'm repeating this again, that when it comes to issues of what matters to us most, we're all one. 1.3 billion people, different caste, religion, customs. When you go to Kerala, for example, the food you eat, the clothes you see people wear, the language they speak, they have absolutely nothing in common with a young Sikh boy who lives in Punjab. In fact, except for maybe cricket, politics, and Bollywood, there's nothing in common. But still this innate Indianness that we have, right from the northeast down to the western borders, there is something that is holding us together. And that Indianness is so unique to our country. It makes us special. So we represent 1/6 of humankind on this planet. And with such a variety of shades and range of people that we have within our country, it's almost miraculous for the world outside to see India remain one, remain united, remain a robust democracy, even though it's a bit noisy, but it's robust. It works. Can it work better? Yes. Do we want to go to some other system? No. It works for us, works very fine. But coming few months are going to be challenging for us. Elections are there. And as a person from the opposition, I can only say one thing before I finish, that today's opposition is tomorrow's government. And that's the golden rule. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Sachin. As a general philosophy, I don't think that columnists should be particularly nice to politicians. As a general philosophy, I don't feel that columnists should be very nice to politicians, because our job is to police you guys rather than to applaud you. But I will grant Sachin Pilot one thing. unlike a certain other politician in Delhi who will go unnamed, which is that he is always up for a genuine debate, genuine questioning, a real grilling. I'm not going to be asking you about the secret of your energy. I'm going to be asking you a lot tougher questions than that today. But let me start off with Pulwama, partly because that's in the news, but also you may not remember, but many years ago I remember you're telling me, recalling an anecdote about your late father, who was one of the most dynamic politicians of post-independent India. And he was, of course, himself very involved in issues in Kashmir. And then for family reasons also, you have had a kind of association. Now, when you look back and you see what is going on in that state, and you see what the level of violence that we're talking about right now, I know that the grief about this particular incident is still very fresh, but I'd like you to step back, because not many people have your perspective, and give us a sense of what you think we've done right and what you think we need to do better.
Okay, so Sadanand, as a politician, the general rule is that we're supposed to be nice to everyone, including columnists, including people who ask us tough questions. It's a very longish answer, but I'll try and keep it to a few minutes. You see, what happened in Kashmir, it's, I think, the most dastardly attack in the last 2 decades. And to go into various reasons of, I'm sure investigations will bring out all the problems that we had in not getting things right. But generally, I think the situation in Jammu and Kashmir needs a lot of intervention. We have governor's rule, we have no elected government there right now. Elections will happen soon, but to my mind, the Kashmir issue is something that needs far more deft handling than the muscular approach we've seen in the last 4 years. Now, here is a party that was a part of the government in Jammu and Kashmir, withdrew support, which then imposed the governor's rule. We have a Lok Sabha constituency in Kashmir, which has not had elections for longer than what we'd like it to be. So I think the Kashmir issue, there is a bipartisan view about this, that it needs to be resolved, it needs to be dealt with politically much more than just economically. Far more engagement needs to be done. But don't forget, our neighboring country in the West is doing whatever it can. And we thought with the new Prime Minister, things would change. And I'm sorry to say this, but it's changed for the worse. General Bajwa and his friends in the ISI are leaving nothing to chance to make sure that things go from bad to worse. We in India have no other option left but then to act in a way that we feel is befitting. So the Kashmir issue, from the Indian point of view, from our political point of view, there's absolutely no change in our stand, for sure. Yes, would I personally have liked a more engaged dialogue with the political stakeholders in Kashmir? Yes. Are we acting from New Delhi in a knee-jerk reaction? Perhaps that's true. And I think what Dr. Manmohan Singh was able to achieve in terms of just the pure numbers, from his 10 years as Prime Minister, number of jobs, the social indexes in Jammu and Kashmir, the level of violence, the attacks, the militancy, the insurgency, all of those numbers were coming down. I'm not drawing parallels here, I'm just trying to put the data out so you can understand. The last 4 and 5 years have been quite traumatic. And my worry is that when young people get, a young Kashmiri boy or girl, born 18 years ago, has seen nothing but curfews and a very hard life. So for them to convince themselves better days lie ahead is a very challenging job.
So let's just pivot from there. And I know that a lot of people over here, based on my conversations, the big question, of course, is the election. And you spoke about some of these data issues. But let me push back a little bit, right? So there is a point of view out there which is that, look, the last experience that people had with UPA 2, for many people was not that great, right? There were numerous corruption scandals. There was a sense that policy had gone adrift. There was no clear sort of economic direction in terms of the reform program. And then that resulted in this big wave against them, and then the BJP came in. Now, I personally have been quite critical of this government, but there are people who push back and say, look, they've only had 5 years. They've tried to do some things. The memory of the last UPA government is still fresh. How do you can easily convince the person who thinks that these guys have simply goofed up. But how do you convince the person who feels that, look, they've done a reasonable job, why not give them a chance? And I imagine there'd be many people in this room who feel that way. So what's your message to them?
See, I keep saying this, Sadanand. Elections are so close, and sitting, in the US, for me to make a hard-hitting political statement.
You can do that, they're all Indian.
I know, but I just feel, I'll talk about the party then. I don't want to talk so much about the government because it can be construed in many different ways. Why are you saying that people today are unaware? There's not a single Indian today, whether he or she is educated or not, who can understand that life today is not better. In fact, it's worse in many ways than it was 5 years ago. So for people in India, it's jobs, it's inflation, it's the price of gas, it's the price of fuel, it's the feeling of being insecure, not about a community, not about a particular religious minority, but just generally. Why is everybody in India today making WhatsApp calls? People are not talking on the phones. People are, there is a sense of Big Brother snooping on you, listening, watching, hearing what you're saying. Why is the financial advisor to the Prime Minister resigned? Why was the RBI governor kicked out or moved out? The Supreme Court judges are having press conferences. Every institution that we know of is being systematically destroyed with a very clear objective. The CBI is raiding CBI. The Enforcement Directorate is raiding the Enforcement Directorate. The allies of the current government are leaving thick and fast. The pushback from the judiciary and the media is for all of us to see. Farmers are committing. I can go on and on and on. And I'm saying, when you said it's just been 5 years, I think, did the BJP not realize that the elections are only for 5 years? So all the promises that they make were for the 5 years. So today you say, no. In 2022, we'll double farm income. And the other interesting part is that every time elections come around, for some strange reason, this Ram Mandir Ayodhya issue just starts to come out of the woodwork. I don't know how that happens, but it happens periodically and with precision, very surgical precision. It happens pretty much just about a few months before the elections. And that tells you that there's nervousness. Because if the government of the day was very confident of its performances, of how nicely it banned notes in India, how beautifully GST was executed, how all the small shopkeepers, traders are happy, and how much benefits we have from demonetization, they won't have to rely upon this religious template. So I think there is nervousness. And these 3 state elections that we just witnessed tells you, and it's also reflective of a new political landscape that's being created. I'm not sitting here and making tall claims about what will happen in the elections. All I'm saying is that we are within our rights as a political party to judge, ask questions, and make the government accountable of what they had promised. I never asked Mr. Amit Shah and Mr. Modi to make these outlandish promises and commitments. They did. So today, on every front, except for speeches and a lot of rhetoric and propaganda, they have a lot of money to spend, but real numbers. So they changed the way you calculate GDP. You know that, right? So suddenly it all seems great. It's 2% more than what it was. But the NSSO statistical officers just left their jobs because they were not allowed to publish the unemployment data. So when questions about data are not being answered, it seems to me that obviously the performance has been far below than what they expected. And just to finish up, you talked about the previous government, allegations. The famous CAG report on which all the allegations were based, the courts have said that there was absolutely nothing wrong as far as the telecom sector was concerned. But no one reports that. All the media headlines were about the telecom scam and the spectrum scam, etc. So I think not many of you perhaps here are also aware that the court has actually said that there's nothing wrong in the entire episode that took place. So I'm telling you today that the Bharatiya Janata Party, which is the party in power in New Delhi, is not going to be able to win people's blessings one more time because they have let them down on almost all fronts.
Let's go from the BJP to the Congress. You've had a good year and a bit. Gujarat, you ran them close, you denied them in Karnataka, and then you won these 3 states in the Hindi heartland.
Yeah.
So it's been a good, 14 months or 15 months or so. Do you think how much of this is, and I agree with you on your analysis that the Modi government probably, they dropped the ball with demonetization, GST, and several decisions. How much of this is them basically going off the rails, and how much of this is your party doing something different? And if it is your party doing something different, what are you doing differently that's accounting for the success?
So I think both the things aren't in isolation. If the government was doing everything which is in an impeccable fashion, was doing exactly what they had said, they'd have much more headroom and elbow room to maneuver the political narrative. It's because they're flaunting on everything. So the BJP in government, I think on the economic front, failed miserably. The Congress party has always said, and we have challenged the BJP on many occasions as far as the economic policies are concerned. So today we are saying that this basic universal income can be made a reality. That's something that we are committing as a political party in our manifesto. And I keep saying this, Sadanand, that it's the policies are fine, you can criticize them, you can change them, but you can't, what about the damage that you do with your politics? So this cow vigilantes, this sort of, ghar wapsi, this love jihad, this sort of narrative, I think is what young people don't want. And we have won elections in these 3 states, not just because the BJP did badly, but because we came to the people of Rajasthan in my state with a blueprint, with an agenda, with a clear-cut objective of what we want to do and how to get there. So job creation, employment, investments, these are not just buzzwords, but I think when the Congress party is in government, economic policies are far more prudent. And Dr. Manmohan, I keep saying Dr. Manmohan Singh because he's someone who's always said that history will judge me more kindly than what's being said about me today. So what he did as finance minister in 91 and what he did as prime minister in 10 years that he was in office, I think have really taken into consideration tens of millions of people in our country who don't have the resources or the access to good school and education and so on and so forth. So he focused on that, still getting 78% GDP growth. So the Congress party is not only asking the tough questions, making Mr. Modi and his government accountable, but we're also saying that if we come to power, we are going to be dealing with you, talking with you, debating with you, unlike the party in power which does not believe in engaging with anyone. So that's one big difference. Our manifesto will be out in the month of March for the national elections. But in the 3 states that we have fought in 1 election, it's also the leadership. Mr. Rahul Gandhi was campaigning relentlessly in all the 3 states. And whether it's farm loan waiver, whether it's protecting women in our society, various issues. And people take a holistic view of what this party stands for, what this ideology stands for, and then make an informed decision.
So let me step back a little bit and just for the sake of argument, push back. You could say that in many ways, the BJP has failed to deliver on many things, but that those are actually systemic issues, right? I've been covering the Indian economy now for more than 20 years. We've been talking about things like labor law reform. We were talking about this 15 years ago. Didn't happen under you guys, didn't happen under these guys. Privatization of loss-making state-owned enterprises didn't happen for 10 years of UPA, didn't happen with these people. Loan waivers, you promised it, they've also done it in some states. Even on the Hindutva stuff, where I actually think there is a difference. The real difference between your parties is on the identity side, because on the economic side, there just seems to be a convergence almost. Though I'll grant you that Congress didn't do something like demonetization, but it did do retroactive tax, which was also really bad. Even on the identity stuff, I mean, if you look at this, right, the Congress government in Madhya Pradesh arrested 3 people under the National Security Act for some cow thing. Every time an election rolls around now, suddenly we can't see enough of Rahul Gandhi in temples. You could make the argument that the Congress has pulled the BJP towards it on essentially a populist leftist economic agenda, and the BJP has pulled Congress towards it on essentially more of a Hindu identity politics agenda.
Yeah, there's no pulling going on, trust me. We are where we were many years ago. Just 2 quick points. You talked about when we were in government, we didn't do the economic reforms as much as we should have done. Don't forget, ours was a coalition government. And who were our coalition partners? The left parties.
First term.
Even second term. So we had many coalition partners. This government is a single party majority after 35 years in India. How much economic reforms has this government done? 0 reforms.
Nobody wants reforms.
No. I'm saying we were constrained because of our political leadership was, many parties, many constraints, many problems. But this party, when it came to power, I thought we'll do wonders about changing something that they have been propagating all this while. I don't think the economic policies overlap. I don't tend to agree with you, because what is the economic vision of the BJP for the last 5 years? Except for going, to 50 countries, getting them in diaspora, making long speeches. What is our economic policy? Has it changed? Has it become better, except for the number juggling that's going on? And please do not think that the Congress party is being brought towards the BJP. That's not possible. Now, this cow thing that you mentioned, there's been a law about cow slaughter since Pandit Nehru's time.
But NSA for it?
So like I said, let me finish. So the cow slaughter law is something that's been in different states for 50, 60 odd years. But why is it that in these last few years, cow vigilantes, temples, temple visits, or lack of them. So I see newspaper reports about Mr. Amit Shah went to these many temples, Rahul Gandhi went to these many temples. So this was never a topic of discussion under any other government. It's this government where a lot of the media, a lot of the television is reporting churches, temples, masjids, who goes where, and how important is that? But let me ask you, if Mr. Rahul Gandhi does go to a temple, why does it make the BJP so upset? Why should it? It's, who I pray to, where I go, I don't go, it's my personal choice. And religion, to my mind, is a matter of my home and heart. But if I seek someone's blessings, or if I go to a religious place, it should not really upset the opposition party so much.
Have you abandoned secularism? That's what people say.
Absolutely not. Never. That's ingrained in our being, in our constitution, it's in our systems. I think everyone must be treated equally. But look at the statement that's coming out of the UP Chief Minister. He was campaigning in Rajasthan, where we were fighting elections. And for 22 days, he didn't go back to Lucknow. He was there campaigning, and I heard some of his speeches in Rajasthan. He was talking about Hanuman ki ye jati thi, Hanumanji was born in this caste, and I was thinking, I said, why is he here not talking about the spectacular governance he's giving in Lucknow? Why is he talking about the caste and gotra of Hanumanji? Then he says, you have Bajrang Bali. No, he says, we have Bajrang Ali, you have Ali. I mean, no, I'm saying the point is, why are they talking like this? Because they don't want Sadanand to ask them the questions about economic reforms, about GDP growth, about job creation, about investments, about more governance, less government. Those issues were there 5 years ago. I remember Mr. Modi, when he was the PM candidate, what lovely speeches he used to make. My God, fantastic. We will do this, we'll change the face of governance, we will do now they're talking about Ram and Bhagwan and Ayodhya, because they know that the tough questions can't be answered. The global oil prices have been depressed for the last 4 years. Why is a single person in India paying 80 rupees a litre when the global prices were almost $50 a barrel? No answer for those questions. Whenever you see the BJP talking about religious, emotive issues, you can understand A, the elections around the corner, and B, they haven't been able to deliver on their poll promises. It's as simple as that. It happens in every election cycle. You see it's happening. It's going to happen, in fact, with much more fervor in the next few weeks.
So I could go on, but I know there are a ton of questions. 2 requests. The first is that you identify yourself. The second is that you keep it brief, and there should be a question mark at the end. And if there isn't, I will cut you off. Go ahead, sir.
Okay.
No, there's a man at the mic.
Yes, so my name is Rahul Gupta. I'm an advanced leadership fellow at Harvard University. So I will make a statement with a question mark at the end. It will be more of a concern rather than a question.
If you can keep it brief, that would be great. Thank you.
It is just a few words.
Yeah.
Is the election going to be fought in the temple or at the border?
Or at the border. And I'll add a follow-up to that, that if it's fought at the border, do you think that actually, in many ways, this is a huge benefit to the ruling party?
I refuse to look at it like this. I think elections will be fought in the hinterland of India, on the farmlands, and in the verandas and drawing rooms of our country. People today are, Indian electorate is very sophisticated. So I think if you, and it must be like that. It has to be like that. You can't let events and emotions dominate an election narrative. Attempts might be there, but I think people of India want a much more better, secure, flourishing future for their kids. And for that, they have to decide which party, which leader is going to deliver that. Everyone can make promises, but to say that 5 years wasn't enough and we only had 280 MPs, we had 150. And we still ran a government that was much more stable. What's happening to the TDP, to the AGP, to Mr. Kushwaha's party, to Shiv Sena, they're all left the BJP. Why is that? Those questions will be asked. I don't think, even if there's an attempt to go towards what you were saying, sir, I think that attempt will be rejected outright by majority of the electorate in India.
So I'm happy to hear that. Thank you.
Are there mics going around? The gentleman there in the turban, is there a mic for him, or is he just gonna? Why don't you just yell? Yeah.
Well, I think the Chief Minister of Punjab, in fact, he was making a statement just in Delhi a few days ago. There are about, if I remember correctly, 28,000 people being put in jail specifically on drug trade charges, right? And it's a long process, but I think what we promised was to attack the whole cartel where the drug operations take place, right up at the top, yes. So I only know what I know from Jaipur. I don't really run the administration in Punjab, but I know that he's very serious about that. And thank you very much for standing with us for the elections. And I hope you voted for us, right? Right.
Okay. Can we have the lady over here? Yeah. Could you identify yourself, please, ma'am?
Thank you, Mr. Pilot. And I just want to say, as a physician, an American, and an OCI, the burning question which a lot of us have is India going to push for dual citizenship? Because I think a lot of us would really like to. I hope you can take this message back, because a lot of us want to get more involved. We can't do that at the moment because we only have an OCI.
But they're worried that all the overseas people are BJP voters.
Ma'am, but ma'am, if you substantially help in electing us to the next government, I can promise you a very, I can promise you a, no, ma'am, please hear me. Words are important. Ma'am, words are important. We will certainly view that request with a very positive attitude.
The gentleman at the mic in the blue jacket.
Hi, my name is Uday. My question really is, other than Congress coming to power, what are the other top 5 things that you think would change governance in India, considering the topic is about politics and governance? What are the top specific 5 things that you would do if you were to be at the helm?
Okay, just the top of my head. One, I think what holds us back the most, sorry, just finish, follow up later on. What's holding us back is, the governance level at the bottom, the 3 tiers in our electoral system. The more human interference we have, the more biases we have. And the more lower level corruption eats into our systems. So if we have, whether it's AI or whether it's some other form of digitization of our services, the less human interference we have and less discretion people have on choosing who they can oblige, who they can't, it will really take away a lot of frustration at the grassroots level. Number 2 is about political funding. It's a big issue, people keep talking about it, but if you were to do that, honestly, with the genuine concern about where will it end if we don't take good steps today to eradicate some of the illicit money that happens in our politics, it will really change, the perception. And in India, we sometimes believe perceptions are more important than reality. And as a person, I've been in public life for 18 odd years, 18, 19 years, and I've seen it's not getting any better, right? That has to change. The third thing I think is, and this is a very small but important, I think, is that elections you see a lot of slogans, posters, hoardings, etc., which people think is color, noise for our electioneering. But people who make speeches, people who make promises, there has to be a mechanism to hold them accountable. You can't make an outlandish promise, which some smaller parties do sometimes, and then get away with it. So I think we have matured as a democracy. Our people are very, very sophisticated when it comes to voting. And you'll be surprised. I want to narrate one small instance. Just take 1 minute, Sadanand. So in 2003, I think it was, or maybe before, my mother was contesting one of the assembly elections, and I was campaigning for her. So on polling day, I was going from booth to booth and just to check if everything's okay. And I was not wearing traditional white kurta pajama, so I could be anybody from anywhere. Group of ladies walking ahead to the polling station, and I was just talking to some people. I stopped them. I said, who are you going to vote for? And they didn't know I'm, a Congress person. I could be anybody. So they were like, we don't know. We'll make up our mind once we go into the booth. Okay. I said, fair enough. That's a very safe thing to say. And these were very, didn't seem very educated, oldish ladies, from the village. And can I speak Hindi if you don't mind?
Go ahead.
So I said, मैंने कहा भाई जी किसको वोट डालोगे? कहती वो तो अंदर जाके देखेंगे. Fine. So they went to the booth. I was walking around, and then after 10-15 minutes, I saw them coming out of the polling station, all 5-6 of them. I said, fine. I walked up to them again. I said, तो किसको वोट डाला आपने? कहती हाय मैं तो भूल गई. That for me was, and she was, so smart, because I could be from BJP or Congress, they didn't know. And I asked before they went, they said, we'll decide when we go into the polling booth. And after they come out, I asked them again. She said, I've forgotten. So that's how seriously we take our electioneering. It's just an example. This is 15 years ago. So you know how ingrained it is. We take it for granted. It's like breathing. Only if someone holds your nose, you know that you can't breathe. Our democracy, our voting, our elections, it's so taken for granted that we sometimes don't understand the value of it. And I said in my remarks, look at our neighborhood. The fact that each one of our votes can decide who will lead our country, that value of its franchise is so powerful to our citizens that it's unmatched anywhere in the world, especially in this country. I think the voting percentage here is like 45%, 40%, so that's all of that.
Ashu Varshni.
That's top 3.
Is there a mic, or should I just repeat his question?
There's mics in places
Okay,
where
just
people
go
are
ahead, yeah.
standing and waiting to ask questions.
Yeah,
You
just go
can't
ahead,
just
Ashu.
people from wherever you want.
Yeah.
Ashutosh Varshne, Professor at Brown University, columnist, Indian Express. Right until, I would say, November, sometime last year, it was widely believed that in Rajasthan, BJP would be very badly defeated. What happened in Chhattisgarh eventually was expected to happen in Rajasthan. You won, but why was the election so close?
Okay, I'll give you 2 or 3 data points, Professor. One is that 5 years ago, there are 200 seats in Assembly. Rajasthan has 200 seats. The Congress party was 21, the BJP 163 in 2013, 5 years ago. So this election, BJP lost 95 seats. From 163, they came down to 71 or something. The Congress increased its seats 5 times. We are 100, we were 21. So the swing, negative and positive put together, is about 13%. That is the largest swing ever in independent India that I recall in Rajasthan. So the swing of the pendulum, they lost vote share, we gained vote share, 13%. Now, perhaps we were victims of over expectation also, right? Because to come from 21 in a house of 200 to cross majority mark, I'm reasonably satisfied. Would I have loved 125, 130, 140? Sure. But just look at where we started from and look at where the BJP was. So for them to have lost 95 seats to the Congress party and for us to increase our vote share number of seats 5 times, I think it's not underwhelming at all. But you're right, why didn't we get 120, 130? I've looked into it, but there were a few rebel candidates that was contesting on the Congress's side, which caused us some seats. But overall, don't forget, Madhya Pradesh, we only had a healthy 60 odd MLAs. So we basically doubled our number, almost doubled our number. But Rajasthan, we were obliterated 5 years ago. We were 21. And for us to come all the way to the halfway mark, I think was no mean task. And don't forget, Rajasthan was the last state to go for polls. So basically, Mr. Shah, Mr. Modi wrapped up everything else, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, and then for 10 days, they were just parked themselves in Rajasthan and, you know, talked about Hanumanji and Gau Mata and temple politics and all that. So I'm not saying it had an effect, but yes, the entire machinery, the resources, you know, BJP is perhaps the richest political party in the world. Certainly in India it is. The amount of resources they deploy, the kind of politics, the kind of RSS mobilization on religious issues, I think had an impact because we also were the last to go to polls. But yet again, we have a clear majority government, and you know, with God's wishes, we'll get even more next time.
Well, we're completely out of time. Extremely sorry. There are many, many more questions, but they've just told me that.
So you have been unfair.
So sorry about this. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks. Thank you.
They could have